Here we go, everyone. I'm back from break, and what a time to get in there. Thanks again to Sierra for sharing the snake pictures as well as holding that giveaway. I appreciate it. Now, while we're going to talk about some spoopy stuff with Call of Cthulhu, I have a little bit of a comfort drink here. Some zero sugar mint mocha creamer in some zero sugar vanilla almond milk with some zero sugar whipped cream on top. It tastes delightful, and it's very guilt-free. So a little bit of a comfort drink as we get into our next part of our rules review. Yep, and orange. In fact, I was going to touch on that. I haven't seen eggnog yet, but I'm sure it's only a matter of days or just a couple weeks before I start seeing it, Noctis. So what we did in our first night of our rules review was not review the rules. We talked about the themes that you can find in Call of Cthulhu. We role-played as if you walked into your friendly local game store and you saw this book and you said, what is this? What is Call of Cthulhu? Cthulhu? Is that an Elvish word? What is this? And we cracked it open and we talked about the concepts of horror, and in particular, what makes cosmic horror or eldritch horror. How to generally approach and appreciate a story like that, and why, for many who might have cut their teeth in D&D, which is, the classic high fantasy, there's an optimistic horizon ahead of you and you're the big damn heroes, why Call of Cthulhu might feel different, or you might feel uncertain about your ability to play in a horror mystery investigation or run one. And so I wanted to assuage those fears, as is my job. And we talked about what is horror, and in particular cosmic. We also made some comparisons to Vampire the Masquerade, as there is a similar theme there. It's just buried a little bit deeper under the personal and political horror of the more overt monsters. And for all of you out there, while we are picking up with this section of rules, if you wanted to read more about the rules, kind of like what Orange Asp had talked about, if you go to your friendly local game store, there is a Call of Cthulhu starter that's, I think, $25, which it has a story, it has pre-generated characters. There you go. It's a good way to get into it. Now, this is the alternate cover because this is the 40th anniversary version. There is a printed one that might be $10 if your local store has it. Go and pick it up. The quick start rules are also free as a PDF on DriveThruRPG. You all out there have no excuse not to go to DriveThruRPG and download a free copy of the quick start rules. Now, how complicated is Call of Cthulhu? It's not a D20 system. So what do you have to do? Which hoops do you have to jump through? You roll at or under the percentage that you have in a particular skill or whatever test you're trying to do. It's a percentile-based system. It's just that easy. You pick up 2d10. One is your 10s, one is your 1s. You roll it, and you want at or under. So if you have a 70 in psychology, and your keeper calls for a psychology test for whatever's happening, or you propose a psychology test. Because this game really leans into, hey, you as the player aren't just the subject of the story. You're a participant. You are investigating something. You're uncovering something. You're trying to hold back the darkness. And so you can propose stuff like that. But anyway, if you have a 70 in it, you pick up the 2d10, you roll it. Did you get a 69? Nice! That means that you passed your psychology test. Sometimes it might be an opposed test, where you're rolling a percentile against something or someone else. But, you know, that's the gist. That's the rules. You roll a percentile for the thing you're trying to do. Hi, Rip Artist. Ivalon, yes. If you have the link ready, let me know, and I will type in the permit command. Unless Daly is still here. And Daly or Raven can give you a permission command. I have chalky milk, so to speak. All right. Daly, can you give Ivalon the command, the permit command, when he says that he has the link ready? So anyway, we did review the quick start rules, Orange, because this stuff is really straightforward, and it's presented very well. We then delved into the Keeper book after we went through the basic rules, because there are some nuances or things that come up outside of maybe a one-shot game. And that could be stuff like chases or magic. You know, in the chapters before this, and by the way, this is an official PDF. I bought this through DriveThruRPG, so I made sure not only do I own a copy of the book, I sell them and teach it, but I paid the cost asked for at DriveThru. You know, this gets into, you know, if you want to take a bracing action for something, do you always have to? Maybe not. Shooting through cover, different types of weapons, going for a knockout blow. You know, if you want to play with a different consideration for armor. If you want to roll for initiative instead of going off of just everyone's decks. The book has a very good way, as it's written throughout, where in chapter 3 you make an investigator, which, by the way, we're going to make characters next week. So hold on for that. We haven't gotten into character creation because we're saving that next. But when you read about this, if you ever find that you're like, oh my God, there's words in an RPG book? Oh, how am I going to play a game if there's words? For all of the rules sections, there is a narrated event that takes place inside these blocks. In fact, with a character, with an investigator named Harvey, that was created in the previous chapter. So you're following the adventure of Harvey throughout the rules. And if that's more your style, where you're seeing the rules in action by reading it, rather than just reading the rules, there you go. They also have these awesome flowcharts, so that you can follow along, and it makes sense of things. And if you have to, print out this page. You're not cheating, and there's no expectation. There's no expectation to memorize all of these possibilities. No RPG expects that, or should. Same with anyone who is the DM, GM, ST, Keeper, whatever, right? Even in D&D, I've been playing it and running it for a long time. I still have to go back to the rule books. I don't have all the spells memorized. I have to look up grappling conditions and things like that. So if you are ever considering, you're taking that bold step in your local store to pick up something and try it, you have permission to not need to memorize all the rules. It's fine. And of all the systems, Call of Cthulhu, I mean, the percentile system, it's pretty streamlined and fun to get into. The free quick start rules and the very inexpensive starter, chef's kiss. And thank you for sharing the link, Evelyn. The basic roleplay system feels so logical. It's not rules light, but it feels so logical that it might as well be, if it makes sense. It does, and I would argue that that Call of Cthulhu probably has a simpler version of the basic roleplay system. And not all of these things come up. Just with any rules system for any game. So anyway, we talked about damage and you know, the basic rules. We talked about luck, which Ivalon, I didn't see a written out alternative for it, but luck was just the tens die. I'm fine with how things played out on Tuesday. And by the way, we're playing another game of Call of Cthulhu this coming Tuesday. But you know, spending it down, regaining it, that sort of stuff. Yeah, Rune Quest is the fantasy version. You know, do we have to memorize every form of damage? No. You can get this as a card, as a reference, as a printout, or if you have the book, just open it back up there. Towards the end of the chapters, there's alternative rules that you can consider. You can consider adopting for your game. Hang on, everyone. My headset is beeping at me, which means that I need to plug in here. All right, there we go. So we made our way through, and you know, for firearms, it has its whole own section because firearms do act differently in this kind of a situation in combat, and there's different rules for different types of firearms. For semi-automatic, automatic. Your game may never use anything more than a pistol, if even a pistol. So don't be afraid to delve into something or say, "Oh my gosh, there's like 10 pages of rules on fire." I mean, there's pictures and the written out examples that walk you through it. There's 10 pages of rules on firearms. I can't play Call of Cthulhu. Literally 2 out of 10. Worst game ever. I'm shaking right now. It's fine. Not everyone needs to have a Tommy gun in their very first session of Call of Cthulhu. Or needs to play Call of Cthulhu during World War II. Or even go another decade ahead and go into the Atomic Age. Or go back decades. Go into the Wild West with that setting. Or go back further to the Gaslight version set in Victorian England. It'd be a lot cooler if they did all have Tommy guns, though. Well, it'd be a spicy game. Call of Cthulhu is lethal. It gets lethal very quickly, and healing is a yeah, Shoggoths don't care about Tommy guns, and it takes the human body, if you survive a gunshot wound, more than someone casting Cure Wounds in a 6-second round to make your boo-boo go away. Alright, now we're getting into chases. The readiness with which I fell into a plan of action proves that I must have been subconsciously fearing some menace and considering possible avenues of escape for hours. From the first, I felt the unseen fumbler meant a danger not to be met or dealt with, but only to be fled from as precipitately as possible. The one thing to do was to get out of that hotel alive as quickly as I could, and through some channel other than the front stairs and lobby. Ah, very good, Bersilas. Now, I'm not going to read the book verbatim to you all. I'm going to address concepts and point things out. I want you to have the book. Support your local store. And if you don't have a local store, I know a guy who can hook you up with the rule books. And you also get a community of people who can help advise you in learning to play and answering questions. Because that's where the value is added at a store like this. Action scenes in films and books tend to fall into one of two categories: fights or chases. The extended chase in The Shadow over Innsmouth, quoted in the previous page, is one of the most dynamic and memorable action sequences in Lovecraft's work. A chase scene should provide just as much drama and excitement as combat. A chase is more than a simple test of speed. A good chase is made up of a string of dramatic locations that challenge the characters as they race through them. The characters may begin in a crowded marketplace before moving to narrow alleys, then climbing a fire escape, breaking through a window, pursuing each other through an apartment as a family eats lunch, and so on. The chase is played out in rounds, much like combat. As each character's turn begins, the keeper should describe the situation, then ask what actions the investigator is taking that round. Only then should the keeper determine what dice rolls are required, the outcome of which should be incorporated into the story, perhaps changing the situation faced by the next player. This is very similar in that theme to the storyteller system in Vampire the Masquerade. Now, the rules are different. You roll d10s, but it's you build a dice pool and such. The emphasis of the rules is on participating in the narrative. You are a participant in the story, not the one being inflicted by it. You pitch your ideas. Crazy or rules as written. You are helping to establish tension and fun and horror and awe and comedy at points in time too. These rules assume the fleeing character has an escape route. The character is trapped and they must escape before a chase can ensue. While some measure of gritty realism can be desirable, avoid becoming overly preoccupied with it. Always bear in mind that the aim is to create dramatic friction, not to mirror real-world physics. First, these rules will address a simple one-on-one chase. Later in this chapter, chases with multiple participants will be explored. These rules are intended for characters involved in any type of chase, whether running, swimming, or flying, and for vehicles of any kind. The rules for chases are presented in 5 parts. 1. Establishing the chase. A method for gauging whether or not a chase needs to be played out in full. In cases where the fleeing character is determined to be fast enough to get away, the chase will go no further than this part. 2. Cut to the chase. Provides the keeper with a system for laying out a chase, positioning all the participants, and deciding the order of play and number of actions each participant can make. Movement. In part 3, this part covers the essential rules for movement and for dealing with the various hazards and barriers that might be encountered. 4. Conflict. Provides rules for resolving what happens when characters and vehicles try to grab, strike, or collide with each other. And part 5, some supplementary chase rules. It contains a section of additional rules that complements parts 1 through 4. Again, you do not have to memorize every single rule, whether it is in this in parts 1 through 4 or the supplements. If the fleeing character is significantly faster than his or her opponent, escape is likely, leaving the pursuer far behind. The chase will be over almost as soon as it has begun. A single skill roll for each character is used to establish the chase, the result yielding one of two options. The fleeing character is faster than the pursuer, in which case it is assumed that the pursuer quickly falls behind, and the chase is not played out. The keeper simply describes how the pursuer loses their quarry in a way that fits the situation. Or the pursuer is fast enough to catch the fleeing character. If this is the case, the game picks up the action at the most exciting moment, the point where the pursuer is closing in on the fleeing character. The speed roll adjusts each participant's move rating for the duration of this chase. Every vehicle and character has a movement rating. A vehicle's speed depends on a driver's skill, while a character's foot speed depends on their physical condition. Each participant in the chase makes a con roll, if on foot or other self-propelled mode, to test his or her physical condition and endurance. Drivers make a drive auto roll for vehicles to test their handling of the vehicle. On a success, no change to the move rating for the duration of the chase. On an extreme success, so that'd be like a critical, right? +1 movement for the duration of the chase. On a failure, -1 for the duration. Compare speeds. The fleeing character escapes if their adjusted move is higher than the pursuer. The keeper is free to narrate a brief explanation of how this occurs, or to ask the players for suggestions. The chase is over and the keeper should move the game on. If the pursuer's adjusted move rating is equal to or greater than that of the fleeing character, a chase is established, and the chase rules are brought into play. Proceed with part 2. If the fleeing character's movement was not high enough to lose the pursuer, the keeper should move the action onto the point at which the pursuer is just 2 locations behind, regardless of how the chase started. This short range serves to focus play on the exciting part of the chase. Whether the characters started next to each other or a mile apart, the aim is to cut to the chase. The fleeing character has already had one chance to escape using the speed roll. The keeper would normally set the starting range to 2 locations, but may opt for a tenser chase by reducing it to 1 location in exceptional circumstances. It is advised not to set the range beyond 2. And here is a narrated version of what we read. And think of it this way, right? This is a horror RPG system that is very, very much leans into horror storytelling. How many times in a slasher film has the killer just suddenly appeared after a chase or after having been left behind, supposedly? It's a tense moment. How did that happen? We read about it in novels. We see it in comic books. We watch it in movies. So when it's talking about this concept, this is your permission to lean into a horror movie trope. This is your permission, your forgiveness for not needing everything to be absolutely, second by second play down to the minutia. Because part of the chase, just like the music we're listening to, it has a tension. How did the killer get behind me? Or how did the monster catch up? There's no time to think about it. I have to get away. Location is a term used to denote a position in the chase. The locations do not need to be equally spaced. A locked door or flight of stairs might take 2 separate locations, while another might be a point on a stretch of open road. Locations divide the chase into narrative chunks, rather than being a set physical distance. For example, a hotel might be divided into multiple locations: revolving door, crowded foyer, stairs, lifts, corridors, restaurants, kitchens, bedrooms, offices, and so on. If a chase takes place at the same time as a separate combat, the keeper should ensure that the distance between locations is not excessive. Otherwise, you may end up with one group of characters running the length of a city block in the time it takes another investigator to smash a chair over a cultist's head. A chase is made up of a string of locations. The keeper should keep careful track of which character is at which location, depending on their speed. Characters may move one or more locations each round. Hazards and barriers are positioned between locations and may slow a character's progress. When running a chase scene, you may find the following method useful for tracking the various characters. Take a blank sheet of paper or whiteboard. Draw a line of dots half an inch apart. Each dot represents one location. Label the first dot with a letter representing the pursuer. Write a letter for the fleeing character, 2 dots from the pursuer. Depending on the opening range, period. As characters move, simply cross out their marker and draw it on its new position. Magnets on a whiteboard work, or you can use minis if you have minis. And you see, this doesn't have to be a detailed grid map or a hex crawl. Could it be? Absolutely, it could be. But at its core, this is tense. This is narrative, which is allowing both parties for some creativity as well as the unexplained to happen. So in this case, an angry farmer is pursuing Harvey down a track. Following speed rolls, Henry's move is now 5. The farmer's move is 6. The keeper chooses to start the action with the farmer 2 locations behind and records the positions thus. Just as with combat, a chase takes place in rounds, and the characters act in dex order. And by the way, getting away, having a chase is in itself a threat and a bit of a supplement, if not a replacement to combat, with how dangerous combat can be. Because not everyone swings with a bare fist. And even people who do might be able to hit you very, very hard. Aha, what's this? Using miniatures. By the way, Reaper has a really good set of minis called Chronoscope. And there's some other ones too that are more sort of like modernish in style. And those would be excellent for investigators. If you're playing Call of Cthulhu and you'd like a mini. Yeah, and so Orange Asp, for that, horror is mostly built around atmosphere and the unknown as well. And when you start having the ability to quantify things by knowing exact distances, it's 60 feet. Well, my movement's 50. That takes a lot of that tension away. Because now we're bringing in the ability to think, to use reason, and to act rationally. So to support the theme of horror, or in this case, more of a terror that builds to a horror, not describing things in quantities that we may with some other systems like D&D or Pathfinder, maybe even Cyberpunk Red. Not using those specifics allows the emotional flexibility to really get into the scene, as well as be creative in how to get out of that scene too. So dexterity, that touches back on combat, so you can watch that or read it in your book. Each character gets a number of movement actions per round. Movement actions are used to move from one location to the next. Faster characters get more movement actions each round than slower characters. Every character and vehicle gets one movement action by default. To this is added the difference between their movement rating and the movement rating of the slowest participant in the chase. Thus, the slowest participant will always have one movement action. Someone with a move that is one above the slowest participant will have two. Someone with a move that is two above the slowest will have three, and so on. Note that some monsters are capable of multiple attacks in one round, and they take place on the monster's turn. And so that would be similar to, that's not even similar. That is from the fighting chapter above, too. But there are monsters who can do more than just one thing. So, some actions in a chase round. On their turn in dex order, highest to lowest, each character may use their turn to move forward in the chase, initiate one attack, and that's the asterisk that some monsters can attack multiple times, cast a spell, perform some other action requiring time and perhaps a dice roll, such as picking a lock. If an area is free of hazards, such as an empty corridor or stretch of clear straight road, the cost of moving from one location to the next is one movement action. A chase that takes place on even clear ground will soon be resolved if the pursuer is faster than the character he or she is chasing, or if both are the same movement speed. The chase might never end, with one character staying just out of range of the other. Either way, this leads to a bland chase scene based purely on numbers. Hazards add a spice to a chase scene. Hairpin bends, slippery steps, thorny bushes, thick mud, and so on. Hazards typically slow characters and vehicles down, and if badly handled, can also do harm. The keeper should present the hazard and allow each character to decide how they deal with it. Skill is always a factor, and sometimes taking a cautious approach, slowing down in order to make a more considered attempt can help. Other times, a reckless approach might be taken to use brute force and speed, such as when breaking down a locked door or taking corners at speed. So, we can go through here, we can read about hazards, ways to spice up and deliver the concepts of this narrative chase. But keep in mind, the skill use is that participation in the story. It is that involvement, which isn't just, well, I'm going to roll a die and I'm going to let a piece of plastic do something for me. Get into the story through your character. And don't forget, maybe some good role-playing might earn you a bonus if your keeper's feeling generous and you're being attentive. So, a list of hazards for car chases. Do you have to memorize every single hazard for car chases? No. Stop. Don't get into that. Don't fall into that trap. You can print it out. You can reference it elsewhere. Or realize that a lot of the time, if you're exploring a haunted house, you're probably not going to have a car chase. So know that it's here. And for those of you playing along at home, because you have a copy of the book, we're on 136. The rules are out here for things that you can do while you're in the car as part of a chase. How do you break down barriers? Kicking a locked door, ramming through a police roadblock? How do you use that blunt force brought up? It's here. You can see that that this narrative is continuing. The angry farmer still pursuing Harvey. A post and rail fence blocks his path. The examples are narrative. Keep that in mind. You are in this living, I'm sorry, but you're in a living horror story. Participate in it as such. Lean into it. Even if, if there's a fun trope to explore. And roll with those punches. But be involved. You can use fighting maneuvers, and of course those were talked about before in the fighting chapter as well. There are many things you can do in a chase, and if in the moment you need to pause the chase to find out how this cool idea, and the cool idea should be first, then go and look up the various minutiae that exist, and adapt it if it needs adapting. As we've seen before, optional rules at the end of the chapter. Here's some random chart, sudden hazards, pedal to the metal. Something like this was brought up in the intro game on Tuesday, especially in a car. It wasn't quite a chase, but there was a skill involved in order to have things happen, and a bit of a trade-off. Here is a breakdown of the rules written out as a story, with the mechanics there, not just as a pure narrative. Hiding, escaping. What do you do if you're driving and have passengers? What do you do if a microbiologist appears? Welcome, Raiders! Can I get a shout out to a microbiologist, please? Yep, Ivlon, good point. Not just running away from a problem, but if you want to get to a place first. Because it's a race to grab the idol at the end of the temple hallway or something. There we go. Thank you, Daily. And we have the Arcane Keeper here. Well, Arcane Keeper just in time for Call of Cthulhu, where we are exploring the Keeper's rulebook to learn the rules and the mechanical system of Cthulhu. Joining a chase in progress. If you can think it up, there's probably a rule that can address it or be very similar. All of these do not happen all of the time. So please do not pressure yourself to think you have to memorize all of this stuff. What do I do if there's a monster? And if there's two of us in a car and a third one meets up? Or you want to reenact the rail car scene from Temple of Doom? Or Resident Evil 4, or have something like that. When in doubt, if you don't want to slow down the narration, do what everyone at the table says. You know what? I think that's fair and it works. So an all-in-one reference here, and I like this little silhouette of the Gribbler here. And here we go. Here is a written out example. It's right here for you. The book is very good at this kind of a thing. Now, we get to a what do we do if a microbiologist appears? I remind them that Cthulhu is not micro, or potentially biology, as they know it, and hope they brought a bigger elder sign. Yeah, so, microbiologist, you're here just in time, as we are going to discuss sanity. Now, this is often, like a stereotype of Call of Cthulhu. Oh yeah, you play Cthulhu, it's the game where you go crazy, and it's treated like a mechanical thing. There are mechanics for it, and there are reasons that the mechanics are involved. I would urge you all to not just look at something like to not just look at this as a dice rolling mechanic. Look at this as, in a way, character development and story enrichment. No sanity in our BG3 game. We are Chaos Gremlins. Is chat voting on your decisions? So you say something noble in the beginning of the conversation, and then you're a real, south end of a northbound mule by the end of the conversation. But I must try to tell what I thought I saw that night under the mocking yellow moon. Saw surging and hopping down the Rowley Road in plain sight in front of me as I crouched among the wild brambles of that desolate railway cut. Investigators begin the game sane and rational. During their investigations, they will encounter otherworldly horrors, alien creatures, and the terrible cosmic truths of the Cthulhu mythos, all of which will challenge their state of mind and sense of normality, and push them to the very edge of sanity. In some cases, the experience will be too much, and the unfortunate investigator will descend into periods of temporary, indefinite, or even permanent madness. Murdering everything, picking fights for no reason, just generally choosing to take the path least traveled. Okay, if it has hit points, it goes down. Each investigator has sanity points that can rise and fall during play. Sanity is used to determine whether the investigator can withstand the horrors of the Cthulhu mythos, as well as stand up to fear-inducing situations without turning tail and running away. Loss of sanity points can lead to insanity. When sanity points are reduced to 0, an investigator is permanently and incurably insane, and ceases to be a player character. So, it's kind of a death, right? Your investigator is now certifiably cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and might be an interesting NPC to bring along on the journey. But there's a certain point that Smeagol became Gollum, and Gollum, there's no going back from Gollum. There might be moments of lucid thought, of a hint of morality. But in that case, there's just a point really of no return. Or no permanent return anyway. So this is a mechanic that exists because it does help to tell that tale of cosmic horror, and to help you get into your character by thinking that character's thoughts and feeling that character's feelings. Sanity points should be tracked carefully, as the number can change up and down throughout the game. When investigators encounter a sanity-threatening situation, the keeper may call for a sanity roll. Each player whose investigator experiences the source of horror rolls a d100. A success is a roll equal to or less than the investigator's current sanity points. Bonus dice and penalty dice are not applied to sanity rolls, with the exception self-help. Note, if using the optional rule for spending luck points, these may not be spent on sanity rolls. A successful roll means that an investigator loses no sanity points, or only a minimal amount. A failed sanity roll always means the investigator loses sanity points. The amount lost depends on the spell, book, entity, or situation encountered. In published Call of Cthulhu scenarios, sanity loss rolls are shown as two numbers or rolls separated by a slash. For instance, sanity 1/1d4 plus 1. The number to the left of the slash is the number of sanity points lost if the sanity roll succeeds. So, in that case, you're guaranteed to lose 1 in the best case. The die roll to the right of the slash is the number of sanity points lost if the sanity roll is failed. Sometimes this may be written as san 0/1d4. In this particular case, a successful sanity roll means no sanity points are lost, but if the roll is failed, the investigator loses 1d4 sanity points. Failing a sanity roll always causes the investigator to lose self-control for a moment, at which point the keeper should choose an involuntary action for the investigator. Some examples. Jump in fright, causing the investigator to drop something. cry out in terror, involuntary movement, involuntary combat action, freeze. A fumbled sanity roll results in the character losing the maximum. Oh, you know what? Ivalon, if you're still out there, I don't know if it was lost, if it was a fumbled sanity roll. Wasn't it? It was a critical success. I think that was being looked at for 0 loss. But in this case, a fumbled sanity roll. And by the way, we didn't read anything here about a critical success, meaning you get 0. It's a guaranteed minimum, even on a pass. A fumbled sanity roll results in the character losing the maximum sanity points for that particular situation or encounter. Losing more than a few sanity points at one time may cause an investigator to go insane, as described later. When encountering one ghoul, the sanity point loss is 0/1d6. It is the same when encountering multiple ghouls. The sanity effect is for the encounter rather than for each ghoul. So, there is a maximum sanity. That can depend. 96 or higher, I believe, if you're below 50. And if you're above 50, it's a 100. From the basic rules section. In Call of Cthulhu, insanity is induced by traumatic experiences and the ghastly comprehension that connects to the Cthulhu mythos. The duration of the insane state depends on the number or proportion of sanity points lost. 3 states of insanity can result: temporary, indefinite, and permanent. Regardless of whether the insanity is temporary or indefinite, it will consist of 3 distinct game phases. First, the insanity begins with a brief bout of madness, during which the player's control of their investigator is compromised. Second, the bout of madness is followed by a period of underlying insanity, during which the player retains full control of their investigator. However, the investigator is prone to delusions, phobias, and further bouts of madness. Third, the final phase is recovery. If an investigator loses 5 or more sanity points, and our psychologist doctor did that in Tuesday's game, from a single source of sanity loss, sufficient emotional trauma has been suffered that the keeper must test the investigator's sanity. The keeper asks for an intelligence roll. If the roll is failed, the investigator has repressed the memory, a trick the mind uses to protect itself, and does not become insane. Perversely, if the intelligence roll succeeds, the investigator recognizes the full significance of what it has been seen or experienced and goes temporarily insane. The effects of temporary insanity begin immediately and last for 1d10 hours. In Vampire the Masquerade, there is a similar situation with humanity. And if you get a stain on your character that you have to make a humanity roll to see if you preserve it, it is that moral consciousness. Have you processed what you've done and feel bad about it? If so, congrats, you are still human. If you say, you know what, F that guy, he deserved it. And by it meaning his throat getting torn out in a back alleyway when all you wanted to do was just, take the edge off, like top up a little bit. Then you become more monstrous and you lose humanity. In this case, are you processing what you just saw? Or not? Sweet Pea says, as a person with kids, sanity is absolutely a skill. Actually, it's an attribute. I absolutely get what you mean, though, Sweet Pea. You are not incorrect. Losing a fifth or more of current sanity points in one game day, the investigator becomes indefinitely insane. No investigator is simply able to shrug off this amount of sanity drain. A day in this instance is defined by the keeper. usually lasting until the investigator reaches a place of safety in which they can rest and recover their wits. Depending on the situation, it may mean surviving until dawn, sitting down for a nice cup of tea, or having a good night's sleep. Indefinite insanity lasts until the character is cured or recovers. And then there's permanent. So you can read about these and how they settle in, how you gain the effects of insanity, how you treat them. For those of you reading along, we're on 156 right now, and this is where you can get into the minutia of it. This is also getting into the tables for different things that can happen. A great inspiration if you as the keeper want to use a table and not just say, you know what, given the current circumstances and the degree of things, this is what happens. Because you can absolutely make that call if you wish. And remember, for all of the written rules, there is a narrated example of them in every one of these beige boxes. This book is fantastic for that. And by the way, if you want to know the name of various phobias, well, here you go. Various manias as well. I suppose if I do make a I suppose if I do make a comparison also to Vampire the Masquerade, as there are concepts of insanity, some sort of a detachment, and not just through becoming a monster over time, but especially with Clan Malkavian. I would urge you not to treat insanity like a mechanic or a dice roll effect. Try to put yourself in the character's situation. And consider the world as you are taking it in through this new filter. If you treat insanity like a dice roll or like a lol, I'm so random, holds up a spork, I'm the Penguin of Doom. I'm so crazy, guys. Oh, I'm the crazy one. Why are you even playing with this mechanic then? It's not. Yes, it could very well lead to something detrimental in the short or long term. Or you can lean into it. And I imagine that an especially good especially good keeper would say, you know what, you are role playing fantastically, for having formed tomomania, an irrational predilection for performing surgery. Now that will probably get your investigator in trouble. But if you're leaning into it, and your irrational predilection for performing surgery might lead to interesting opportunities. Not just negative consequences, though those might be there. But think about what a person like this experiences, right? Because otherwise, if you don't want to tread those waters, or you treat it like a status condition in a video game or a dice roll, it's I think you're really undermining not just this cool way to explore the game and its rules, but learning about something that someone else might even experience. Oh yeah, The game We Happy Few. That would be very interesting to run through Call of Cthulhu. Idolomania, Iconomania, Hulkamania. Is that Ligma Mania? Now there are some. Oh yeah, brother Bersilis. There are some other considerations too. For snapping out of it, but also maybe this leads to some cool roleplay because you actually have a delusion, a vision, a hallucination about something that leads to the game, or what you're experiencing ends up actually being a crucial event that is necessary. Here's a quick reference on sanity loss as you lose your sanity over time. Do you have to know everything that is needed in a game 1 of Call of Cthulhu to commit someone to an asylum? No, you don't. It's here because it might happen for one reason or another. But don't get caught up in saying, oh, there's rules for all this and I got to remember this as an investigator. There is a way to increase your sanity points as well, to start, kind of coming down from what was afflicting you. For example, something like this. Seeing it, reading about it, realizing that something like this actually exists. And in the back of this chapter as well, as we've seen in others, optional rules, such as insane insight. When an investigator goes insane, temporarily or indefinitely, he or she has a momentary insane insight. This moment of clarity provides a clue or action that might benefit the investigators immediately or at some later stage. I'll tell you what we'll do, everyone. As I am all out of my my sugar-free chalky milk here. Just the nice comfort drink to explore the scary stuff. Why don't I get up? I'm going to go stretch. I'm going to go renew my drink. And why don't we come back and we'll talk about magic in Call of Cthulhu. It may not come up all the time. It's not exactly like you're playing a wizard in D&D. But it is a part of the game to consider. It could come into play, even in a short form adventure. Maybe your keeper allows you to build a character that can just wield it from the get-go. And then, I don't know. We'll see where we go from there. So I will be back in maybe 5 minutes, everyone. Let's take 5.